Welcome back to the second part of the masking tutorial here. What we want to do now is show you a little bit of what we can do with our boat, with the different things that we have extracted here. Control J now, I have full control. I can take multiple boats now and move them across. I can make them smaller, I can make them bigger, and that is kind of cool. Now, the only difference when you mask as to when you create a new layer of something in a destructive method is that when you mask, the bounding box is still the size of the original image. So be careful with that. That can be a little bit disorientating. That's not a word. Disorientating? Yes, it is a word. Well done. I'm a real YouTuber now, correcting myself. But here we are. I've made this boat smaller, and if I want to, I just want to duplicate the layer so I can show you how to apply an adjustment to everything and then an adjustment to just a singular layer. So actually what we're going to do is we're going to make one more copy of that. This is not the image that you would want. It doesn't look really good, but for the purposes of this tutorial, it works perfectly. I'm going to hide this guy. I don't know why he's doing that there. Oh. Anyways, forget that. Okay, so if I add an adjustment here, and all of my adjustments are under this tab here, adjustments. If you ever lose any single window, come up to window adjustments here. A bunch of you, especially in InDesign, were asking me about your text layers and text wraps and different things. In any Adobe program, if you ever lose a window, you can come up to this appropriately named tab called Window, and then select the window that you're looking for. So here I am here in Adjustments, and I'm given a number of adjustments by default here by Photoshop. These are adjustment layers, not filters, and I want to show you what happens when I apply one of these. For example, if I wanted to make everything in the image brighter, I could use levels, I could use brightness and contrast, even curves, yes, exposure. So there's lots of different ways that you could achieve the same effect. You just have to choose the most appropriate effect. For example, if I want to choose something real simple like brightness and contrast, and I just bring the brightness up, you'll notice that that applies to every single boat. The reason that does that is that every single one of those layers underneath is now affected by the layer that's on top. Now, I could leave that layer there. What if I only wanted to make one boat a different color? So I could come here to color balance, maybe move this layer on top of this guy here, and look at what's going to happen. If I start to change the color balance here in the midtones and make it something ridiculous, I'm going to notice that this layer is now affecting each of these layers that are underneath, but not the one that's above it. Now, if I only wanted this adjustment to affect this single layer, I can click this button here, and it will now only affect the layer that's directly underneath it. You'll notice this kind of thing happens here. It gets indented, and now it's only affecting the layer underneath. That would mean if I duplicate that, drag it on top of this layer, and then also apply a adjustment to that single one, I can get 3 separate color adjustments. Now, both of these here are only applied to the layer underneath. This one here is applied to all of them universally. Very, very important way to understand color adjustments. I'm just going to pause there. We had to pause there. There were people being a bit too loud, but continuing on from where we were, you've just seen how to add adjustments to your layers, add adjustments to individual layers. I can hide those adjustments, and you'll see exactly that this adjustment at the top applies universally to all the layers, whereas these other adjustments apply to just the layer underneath it. Now that's all well and good, but we want to look at how to apply masking now to those adjustment layers. So if we do something here, let's just grab all of these, chuck them in a folder, hide that, bring back our original Mekong boat. Let's say, for example, here, I'm going to grab this guy, bring him over here so we can see him a bit better, and make him a bit bigger. Nope. There we go. Make him a bit bigger. I can now add an adjustment to that particular layer. For example, as we already know, let's say I want to make actually, I'm going to show you an example with something that is extreme, not something that you would normally do. Let's go back to color balance, our color balance adjustment. We're going to drag our Mekong layer on top, no, not like that, but on top of our folder. Or drag our folder down. There we go, that's better. So now we want to apply this color balance directly to the layer underneath. Let's make it something extreme, like super red, super yellow. And now with any adjustment layer that you add, you have these masks here. We're familiar with masks. We understand that if it's white on the mask, that is what is visible. If it's black on the mask, that is what is invisible, hidden, or subtracted. So right now, we have this white color balance adjustment mask is essentially what this layer represents. It's a layer that's a color balance mask that sits on top of everything and it changes whatever's underneath it. We can make holes in this mask, subtract certain parts of the mask, so then only certain areas are affected by this color balance effect. So we're familiar with this. This is a white mask. I can come across here to a brush, make it a black brush, and now make my brush size bigger. And with my mask selected on my color balance layer, you'll notice that I can actually subtract the effect as if I'm subtracting the mask. Now, we did this earlier using a mask, and we subtracted and added a part of the image that we wanted. Now we're applying that to the actual color balance layer. If you look at the color balance adjustment layer, you'll notice that the mask isn't fully white anymore, but now that it is white with black, a portion of it that's black. What that means is only the areas in white are affected by the color balance effect. So if I wanted to do something useful with this, rather than just show you something like that, for example, if I wanted to show the sun beaming down on the roof of this, I might just use that effect on the roof and not on anything else. I might want to do that. I might then change the actual effect to make it a little bit less intense. But as you can see, I could totally change now the roof of that boat because it is only applying to that layer. Now, how do I use this? I can use this for a whole bunch of different things, especially in our photo manipulations. If I hide that color balance and I add one that's very, very common, which will be our brightness, contrast, or our levels. For example, if I want to make a certain part of the boat darker or brighter based on where the sun is, based on where the light source is coming from, I can do that. Let's say I want to blow out the top of the boat and make it a little bit white, a little bit brighter, as if the sun was coming from the top up here. I can do that. I can make the whole thing brighter, and then I can come here to the mask, get my paintbrush tool, and again, wow, that's the woodwork room that you can hear. That's fantastic. And make my mask like this. Therefore now, again, that's a bit extreme. I can make that brighter. Now to blend that in a little bit more, you can do even more advanced effects now. For example, I have all of this area here in shadow, especially the area under the roof. That's not going to work. The area that's being hit directly by the sun, that might be brighter than everything else. That's fine. What about this area here where the sun might be hitting the boat here, but it's not going to be hitting it at the same intensity as the roof? So what I can do if I undo that is I can go at the top here to my brush. I can change the blend mode of the brush. I probably wouldn't play with that right now, but I can change the opacity. And what that does, if I do 50% opacity, it's the same effect, it's the same level of brightness and everything, but now it's just halved. And I have a 50% opacity on this boat. You'll notice that the roof and the side of the boat are at different intensities. The intensity is controlled by the opacity level. That's probably still a bit too much. I'm going to bring that back down to maybe 25% and brighten up the side of that boat. And again, subtlety is the key here. Subtlety is the key to making your photo manipulations look realistic. So now I've slightly brightened up the side of the boat with 25% opacity. On the top, I've got 100% opacity. And let's say the back here of the boat, that already has a shadow in it from the original image. But to accentuate that, I might want to make that darker. How would I make that darker? Well, again, I can apply a second color level. I can do a whole bunch of different adjustments on that singular layer and apply it directly underneath. I could put all of that in a folder and then apply a second level. That second level being darker. That's going to apply to everything at first until we get our mask and we subtract everything that we don't want out of it. Here's fantastic rookie error. You'll notice that here in my mask it's looking a little bit grey rather than black, and my effect wasn't coming up as well as I wanted to. Be careful with that. The reason why that happened is because my brush is still over here at 25% opacity. I'll bring that back up to 100%. There we go. That's exactly what we were looking for. So that's making a fully black hole in that mask. Therefore, nothing is applied in that layer other than this area here where I haven't made the hole. Fantastic. If I make a hole here, you can see it goes back to normal, or I darken it up a little bit here. I might want to darken this up a little bit. And now you can start to make adjustment layer masks based on the different things here. So that's how you use masks with adjustment layers. Every single adjustment layer that you use will come out as a mask. You can apply, if you have multiple layers in your manipulation, just like I did here, you could apply a group. If I hide all of these, you can apply a group folder to all of those layers and then apply an adjustment layer to that whole group if you wanted to. For example, I'll show you that right now. Let's chuck all these into a group. Let's call this not used. As a matter of fact, you know what, let's just delete that for now. We're not going to come back to that. Thank you, group and contents. And this is all of these guys here. If I wanted to add an adjustment layer to all of these and make all of them just a little bit brighter, I could apply now an adjustment layer to just that group, and look at what's going to happen. The adjustment layer will actually apply to every single layer that's within that group. So if you had an area of your photo manipulation that was very complex and made up of multiple elements, you could put them in a group folder and then add an adjustment layer to that group folder. And of course, it's a white mask, so the same principles for masking apply. Once you get this concept of masking, it actually unlocks quite a lot in Photoshop. You notice that a lot of things have this white box that's a mask. Sometimes it's a black mask. The same principle applies. If it's a black mask, then a white brush will then reveal things or subtract things. Fantastic. All right, that's masking with adjustment layers. And I'll see you next time. Signing out. Thank you, YouTube. Yeah.